The spotlight found him before he could even spell his own name. At 5 years old, Michael Jackson stood on stages across America, his small body swaying to rhythms that pulsed through his soul. The crowd roared. His father watched from the wings with eyes that never smiled. Joe Jackson didn't believe in childhood. He believed in perfection, in rehearsals that stretched past midnight, in mistakes that brought punishment swift and sharp. Michael learned to sing through fear, to dance through exhaustion, to smile through pain that carved itself into his bones. Other children played in parks and scraped their knees on sidewalks. Michael played in recording studios and scraped his spirit against impossible expectations. His brothers stood beside him, but they couldn't shield him from the weight pressing down on those tiny shoulders. Fame came fast and brutal, tearing away innocence like paper in a storm. By the time he turned 10, Michael had performed for presidents and packed arenas that held thousands. He had everything a child could dream of, except the one thing he needed most: permission to be a child. The Jackson 5 became America's sensation, their music infectious and joyful. But behind Michael's dazzling smile lived a boy who flinched at raised voices, who practiced moves until his feet bled, who learned that love came with conditions and control. The world saw a prodigy. Michael felt like a prisoner. His childhood became a ghost that would haunt him for decades, a stolen treasure he would spend his entire life trying to reclaim. Even as the crowds grew larger and the fame burned brighter, that wound inside him deepened. Nobody noticed. They were too busy dancing. Michael grew into a force of nature, but the cracks in his foundation ran deep. Thriller arrived in 1982 like lightning splitting the sky, selling millions, shattering records, making history with every beat. He became the king of pop, a title that fit like a crown made of thorns. His performances were supernatural, gravity-defying moments that left audiences breathless. The moonwalk became iconic. The glove became legendary. Every move he made turned into cultural currency. But success couldn't heal what childhood had broken. Michael built Neverland Ranch as a monument to the innocence he'd lost, filling it with rides and animals and laughter that wasn't his own. He invited children there, surrounding himself with the joy he'd been denied, trying to experience through them what had been stolen from him. The world misunderstood. They whispered, speculated, judged. Michael's appearance began changing, his face transforming through surgeries that he claimed were minimal but clearly weren't. He said it was vitiligo that lightened his skin, and medical records would later prove this true, but the accusations of self-hatred followed him like shadows. The pain pills started somewhere in these years, prescribed after an accident, then becoming something else entirely, something he needed just to face another day. His relationships crumbled under scrutiny. Lisa Marie Presley loved him genuinely, but the pressure crushed them. Debbie Rowe gave him the children he desperately wanted, but their marriage was more arrangement than romance. Michael wanted family. He wanted normalcy. He wanted what everyone else took for granted. Instead, he got isolation, wrapped in wealth and fame that felt like prison bars made of gold. His music remained brilliant, but the man behind it was fracturing, piece by piece, smile by smile. In 1993, everything collapsed. A 13-year-old boy named Jordan Chandler, encouraged by his father, accused Michael of abuse. The media exploded. Headlines screamed guilt before any trial began. Michael's face appeared on every television, every magazine, twisted by suspicion and rage he couldn't escape. The police raided Neverland, photographing his body, violating him in ways that left psychological scars deeper than any physical wound. Michael maintained his innocence with a desperation that felt raw and real, but the damage was catastrophic. His lawyers advised him to settle, to pay millions and make it disappear, because fighting meant months of testimony that would destroy him regardless of the verdict. Michael agreed, and that decision haunted him forever. To many, the settlement meant guilt. To Michael, it meant survival, choosing a smaller death over a larger one. His health deteriorated rapidly. The pain pills increased. His weight dropped. Insomnia became his constant companion, nights stretching endlessly while his mind replayed accusations and betrayals on an endless loop. He cancelled tours, checked into rehabilitation, emerged looking more fragile than before. The children he tried to help now represented danger. Every kind gesture became potential evidence. Every friendship became suspicious. His trust, already damaged by years of exploitation, shattered completely. He stopped inviting people to Neverland. The ride stopped running. The laughter faded. The ranch became a beautiful tomb, filled with reminders of joy that no longer existed. Meanwhile, his music suffered. Albums came slower, with less impact. The genius remained, but the spirit behind it was dying. Michael performed because it was all he knew, because stopping meant confronting the emptiness inside. But performing also meant exposure, and exposure meant pain. In 2003, Martin Bashir's documentary aired, and Michael walked straight into another nightmare. The film showed him holding hands with a young cancer survivor, speaking about the innocence of sharing his bed, words that sounded damning to a world already convinced of his guilt. Within months, police arrested him. The trial began in 2005, a media circus that turned justice into entertainment. Every day, Michael walked into that courtroom wearing suits that hung on his thinning frame, his face a mask hiding terror that consumed him from within. Witnesses testified. Prosecutors painted him as a predator. His defense presented evidence of extortion, of a family with a history of making false claims for money. The jury heard everything, saw everything, felt the weight of judging a man the world had already convicted in their hearts. On June 13, 2005, the verdict came, not guilty on all 14 counts. Michael had won, but winning felt like losing. The trial had cost him everything that remained. His finances were ruined. His reputation was destroyed beyond repair. His body was broken, addicted to medications that barely kept him functional. He left America, wandering between Bahrain and Ireland in various temporary homes, a king without a kingdom, famous beyond measure but more alone than any homeless person sleeping in doorways. His children became his only anchor. Prince, Paris, and Blanket represented everything pure in his life, the three souls who might remember him with love when the world only remembered accusations. But providing for them meant working, and working meant returning to the stage he both loved and feared. In 2009, Michael announced his comeback. This is it, 50 concerts at London's O2 Arena. He was 50 years old, exhausted, terrified, but desperate to prove he could still be the king. The rehearsals for This Is It showed flashes of the old magic, Michael moving with grace that defied his age and condition, his voice still capable of moments that pierced hearts. But behind the scenes, he was collapsing. He couldn't sleep. His body screamed in pain from decades of dancing, from lupus and vitiligo, from stress that had become physical. Dr. Conrad Murray entered his life as the man who could help, who could give him the sleep he desperately needed. Murray administered propofol, a powerful anesthetic meant only for surgery, turning Michael's bedroom into a makeshift operating room where he could find a few hours of unconsciousness that resembled rest. On June 25, 2009, Murray gave Michael a fatal dose. At 2:26 p.m., Michael Jackson died in his Los Angeles home, his heart finally giving out under the weight of everything it had carried for 50 years. The world stopped. Billions mourned. Radio stations played his music on endless loops. Memorials formed spontaneously in cities across every continent. People danced in the streets to Billie Jean and Thriller, celebrating the genius, the icon, the king. But Michael was gone, and with him went the truth of his suffering. The trial that followed convicted Murray of involuntary manslaughter, but he served less than 2 years. That was the price for Michael Jackson's life, for the boy who'd been robbed of childhood, for the man who'd given everything to his art and received mostly pain in return. His children stood at his memorial, Paris breaking down as she called him the best father imaginable. The world finally saw him clearly, but only in his absence. Michael Jackson had danced for them, bled for them, died for them. And they danced along, never noticing the cost.